So a couple of cool things happened this week, which made me have to make a vlog. I got assigned an exciting new task for work, which is about creating a virtual machine that allows viewing the file system in the browser, but more on this later. I went on a short trip with my girlfriend to one of the most beautiful cities in the Netherlands. The Amsterdam AWS Summit happened, which brought over 6,000 developers together. About that new project at work, one of the limitations of building apps in the browser is that you can't easily interact with the user's file system. On each request to view or edit a file, you require the user's permission. So an app that classifies files on a user computer and then displays the file within the app should probably be built as a desktop application in, for example, Electron. But what if you have no choice? What if a client wants to pay you extremely well for an app that can do this, but they don't want employees to download foreign software on company computers? Well, then you're forced to use a virtual environment to store the user's file system and host an API on the VM that allows you to request a file with the given path name. A quick reminder that a VM is just an isolated computer that runs within a computer, so it has its own file system, operating system, and memory. Only the memory is actually a location on the main computer. This way, large computers can open multiple VMs that will each host a developer side project with an impressive 8 total users. Now, a web client that has access to path names from a database can request to receive documents and then render them in the browser. Alright, so I would kind of like to make two things clear. Basically, what is a virtual machine and really build that mental model of what it is and how it's used. And second, how, if you have an application that's running on a virtual machine, how is it actually deployed to the internet so that you can use it through an API or through just visiting a website. So I kind of want to take you through like a normal flow I would use to actually access the virtual machine. So right now the screen you're seeing is just my physical computer. So it's just my MacBook that I'm using. But let's imagine now we use an app, for example, the Windows app, which we can use to connect to a remote computer. So that's normally how I start my flow. I just connect to this remote computer. And the way you should imagine that is, for example, a computer somewhere in a data center without a screen or a monitor anywhere. But it does have the operating system that knows how to render the screen on a desktop like you see on this MacBook. So that's what we're doing. We're basically connecting to this computer in the warehouse. And then that computer in the warehouse is also going to return the display, the monitor, so that we can actually just view it like it's a different tab on this computer. I'm literally just interacting with the code editor to eventually build an application which I'm going to run on the virtual machine. So the virtual machine has its own IP address, right? So let's say random virtual machine IP address. And now here cursor's got a little suggestion, perfect. So let's say this is the IP address of the virtual machine. So it's running on this data center and it is part of a network. So the IP address basically points any computer to where this computer is on the network so that we can actually send requests to it and receive response from it. And then when we run stuff locally, what normally happens is, right, we're running a program locally. Then we have npm run dev, which starts running an application at this IP address. Now, this IP address here, which also just means localhost, is kind of a reserved IP address. And what that IP address lets you do is basically talk to your own computer. So the connection is closed to outside requests. So no random person on the internet can hit this endpoint and receive a response from your computer, because obviously you wouldn't want that when you're running locally. So this IP address prevents that. So when you're running locally, that's why you use it. But when you run programs, program production, you usually run npm run build, which then runs your program at this IP address. This IP address is basically how all programs run on a computer that in the end is going to be public to the internet. So let's say I'm hosting this virtual machine, and this virtual machine has a bunch of different IP addresses. It has this random one that I said here, but it also has like ones from maybe like a LAN service, so something that you can only connect to locally. So a computer on the network has multiple IP addresses. That's important to know. It has multiple IP addresses, and what this 0.0 0.0.0 does is it basically says like, I don't care which IP address is being hit, always respond or always intercept the request and run the application. So if I'm trying to run this application on the virtual machine, I'm just going to have that application run at this IP address. And then it's going to listen to all the IP addresses available on the virtual machine, intercept all of them, and respond with the application. So that's kind of the key difference between running something locally versus on production. And then obviously, if you want to get deeper into like proper cloud infrastructure, you need to make sure you have a service that detects whether the server has downtime. So let's say your computer crashes and the application is no longer running, then you probably want some automation that's going to like restart the service so that that application is still accessible on the public internet. And that's basically what these providers like Vercel and Azure, AWS, they all kind of abstract that from you and handle all the complicated stuff. But in essence, it is basically just the difference between these IP addresses. So on the topic of cloud providers, this week was also the AWS Amsterdam Summit. So over 6,000 developers came to meet in Amsterdam, and AWS basically just shared their new innovations and the things they're working on. And I kind of wanted to just show some clips of the event and also what I was up to this weekend, while talking about in particular this one talk that I went to, which was about the state of European tech and where it's going, and also just the state in general of this whole AI hype. And you could really feel the energy, at least in Amsterdam, about where is this going, what is the business value, where do we stand as developers, are we needed in the next years. These kind of conversations were all happening all the time at the event. So I kind of wanted to just break down my thoughts, make some predictions, and share the event with you guys. So as is expected from any tech conference these days, if you're not interested in AI, you're fucked. Luckily for me, I've been especially invested in AI these last few months, trying to find legitimate business value for it. And what I love about Amsterdam is that most people in our industry have been trying to do the same. The vibe and energy around the new technology is contagious here, and I know a lot of young people like me who are working hard to try and profit from it. Unfortunately, my prediction is that the AI revolution has already happened, and let's say we are at 70% of what its final form may look like. AI models and their infrastructure will still get better. The first physical AI product has yet to hit the market, which OpenAI just hired the ex-design firm of Apple products to investigate what that could look like, and we're still waiting for better AI integration with our day-to-day apps. So AI, when it was first released, is kind of like the birth of the internet, and successful companies that find business value for AI like Cursor or Windsurf are like companies that could only exist because of the internet, like Amazon or Airbnb. There are still many of those to come that I'm sure of, but those will ultimately just be profitable companies creating new jobs, and not this dystopia where everyone is being replaced by AI.